I never planned to be a headline. I planned to clock in before sunrise. Warm 2 bottles fold, tiny socks hum, a Motown hook that settles fussy babies when a big house feels too quiet. And on the day everything snapped, I was the woman tied to a bed in a billionaire's nursery, with his twins asleep on my chest. Yeah, that happened. The Ashford place in Harbor Point is glass and stone and money perched over water. Serena Ashford runs it like a museum where the rules have rules. Grant's always on planes, the twins, Maisie and Max, are sunshine that drools on your collar. And my phone rang that morning with St. Bridget's Medical Center on the screen saying my boy Micah had spiked a fever again. I asked for 1 hour, I asked polite, then careful. Then with my hands shaking, Mrs. Ashford, please, I'll run there and run back, and she set down her crystal like a gavel. You keep my children quiet, that's the job. Then stepped close enough for me to smell gin and decision. If your child is that fragile, perhaps choose a different profession. And I swallowed the heat and asked for mercy, and she smiled, thin as fishing line, and did the kind of thing people do when obedience isn't enough. They want proof they own you. She slipped off a silk scarf, yanked my wrists over the headboard, tied them tight, cinched a baby harness around my shoulders, so the twins were pinned to my chest. If you won't stay put, Imani, I'll make sure you do, and when I whispered this was dangerous, she said, what's dangerous is help that forgets her place, shut the door like a cabinet, and left me humming to keep 2 babies calm, while the knots burned and shame burned hotter. You know what I mean? I don't know how long I hummed long enough to bargain with God, and anyone listening long enough for my arms to go numb. And right when the twins finally slept, the front door opened, footsteps in a hallway that had never noticed me, and the nursery door swung wide, and there stood Grant Ashford in a navy suit with question marks in his eyes. You're tied to the bed, with my kids strapped to you, and I said the only thing that made sense in a house like that, please lower your voice, they're finally asleep. He stepped in, saw wrists rubbed raw, and a split lip, and babies breathing soft on a chest that felt like a shield. And before I could explain, the heels arrived Serena with a fresh glass and a voice like theater. Caught her napping, had to make sure she didn't sneak off again, and the part of him that signs deals went quiet, and the part of him that's supposed to be human got loud. You tied her, you risked them. His hands shook as he loosened knots and slid off the harness. Max went to his shoulder like it was a cliff ledge. He wrapped a coat around me, looked at Serena and said, out like the word had been waiting years to be used, then looked at me and said something I didn't expect to hear in that house. You're seeing your boy tonight. The drive to St. Bridget's cut through fog and pine wipers keeping time with my pulse. I kept my hands in my lap because if I touched my wrists I'd cry, and I wanted the first tears to belong to good news, not ropes. Grant asked how old Micah was, and I told him 7 and stubborn and in love with birds, a notebook full of wings and facts. We'll get you there, he said. I'm sorry this happened, and I answered the way women like me learn to survive, careful and true. Sorry is a word tonight, I need action, and he nodded. Then action. Fluorescent lights always make truth look a little too honest. The triage nurse recognized me because we've worn grooves in that floor and said room 312. And when Micah saw me, his eyes lit like the moment a wobble turns into balance, mama thin voice, brave smile, and I said, I'm here, throat tight, and Grant stood in the doorway like a guard who finally found a post that mattered. 10 quiet minutes belonged to hawks and superheroes and plastic cups of water. Then the nurse whispered that a woman in silk was in the lobby making noise, and Grant told me to stay. Do not move for anyone who isn't wearing scrubs, went downstairs and came back. A different person, or maybe the same person with the lights on. She's gone, he said. And this won't be quiet, then called a lawyer, a counselor. His mother, not the press, not yet. By morning, a tabloid called me a secret romance and a scandal. That's how fast strangers will peel your skin for clicks. Grant looked at the headline, then at me, and the PR team tried to hand him a script, and he surprised me. We're not spin-doctoring abuse, we're telling the truth, and when he said we, he meant it. If you want to speak, you speak. If you want me to take the hits, I will, but we don't let them make you a rumor. And I was done being spoken about like furniture. So I stood just off stage with Micah's hand in mine while Grant said, "This isn't scandal, it's injustice," said my name clearly, and stopped like a man who finally knew the difference between a microphone and a mirror. The cottage outside town looked like hope. If you squinted, peeling porch patch of grass, fresh sheets and groceries, and a toothbrush still in the wrapper. "It's yours as long as you want it," he said. Hands open like a life raft, not a favor. No strings, and pride tried to guard me, then stepped aside. "Thank you, my son sleeps here. That's the only contract. We didn't become a fairy tale. We became a schedule, meds and appointments. And Lucky the rescue dog, whose leg healed wrong, but his joy healed bigger. Pancakes on Tuesdays, questions in a notebook labeled, 'Things I should have asked' years ago, and the kind of showing up you can't fake. And when he told me he wanted his foundation to be a lighthouse, not a line item, asked if I'd stand with him to launch legal aid and emergency housing and a hotline that answers and helps, I told him I wasn't a symbol, I was tired. And he said, "Then we build something that makes other women less tired. If you want, if not, I still build it." And that's how you know somebody's trying to change, they let you say no. The gala at the museum felt like a hallway to a door I was finally ready to open. A boutique owner put me in green because she said that's what hope looks like when it stands upright. And Grant didn't talk about my pain like it built him. He talked about his house like it hid the worst. Then asked if I wanted the mic, and my heartbeat answered before fear could. I believed silence was safer. I told a room full of people who've never been told to use the service entrance. I believed if I worked harder and smiled sweeter, I could survive without making anyone uncomfortable. I was wrong. Survival without dignity isn't living, and work without safety isn't work. It's worship of those with keys. And they didn't clap right away. They listened, then they clapped like humans, not donors. On a balcony afterward, Serena appeared like a bad memory with lipstick. "Enjoy the attention. It won't last. Women like you are novelty." And I said, "I'm not a novelty. I'm a mirror." She leaned in with that old entitlement. "You think you deserve him." And I said, "No, I deserve peace." And she stepped back, because for the first time her power looked like a costume she couldn't zip anymore. It would be clean storytelling to say. The court moved fast and right, and the world fixed itself. Real life is messier, but the twins got a guardian who asked questions at their level. A judge put Serena outside a house she curated like a brand, and the foundation rolled faster than I believed possible. Lease on a storefront. Lawyers on call cots in a back room for nights when leaving is the only safe choice, we called it. Anchor house because you drop an anchor when the storm hits hardest, so you don't drift where you don't mean to go. Grant asked me to consult, then coordinate, then lead. I said no twice because fear disguises itself as modesty, and Micah, missing tooth and superhero pajamas, looked up and said, "Maybe do it on purpose," and that kid tells the truth like it's a hobby. Dedication day was bright and windy, sunflowers on the rail. Because joy looks good on railings, the mayor talked. A pastor prayed, a cook brought cinnamon rolls, somebody handed me scissors, and I said, "This place isn't glass and steel, it's built out of every woman who kept going after." She was told to keep quiet if you need to rest or plan or breathe. "Come in, you don't have to whisper, here we cut the ribbon." A client came an hour later with sunglasses and a jaw set like resolve. We made a plan by asking what she wanted. instead of telling her who to be. And while we wrote it, I felt something tuck under my ribs where fear used to live, not safety exactly, not yet, but the muscle memory of standing up. That night on the porch with Lucky snoring like a small truck, Grant handed me a box with a key, not a ring. Top office, he said, we're naming it the Rhodes Room for Restoration. Not because you survived, because you rebuilt.